Hello everybody, this is the final project presentation for our class Risk Analysis with Professor Andrew Bates. I am Walter Ocampo and my group is Emanuele Morbidoni, Aki Mia, and Rusha Ghosh. The final project is about the Eastern Platform, which is a part of the Hudson Yards. This is what we're going to talk about during this presentation. The whole platform is 28 acres. The Eastern Platform will consist of 18 acres. The estimated cost is $700 million. This project started in 2013. The entire project will be finished by 2018.
Thank you, Walter. We use a probabilistic risk analysis to estimate the impact in schedule and cost related to our project. These are the 40 risks that we listed at the beginning. From the 40 risks, we focus on 12 risks, and we try to analyze the causes and the effects related to each risk. Now I'm going to explain more in detail how we apply this process for each risk. The first risk that I analyze is accident on the job site. During the qualitative analysis, I assign a high probability that it can happen, a medium impact on the schedule, and a very high impact on the cost. We decide to use a strategy to reduce this risk. The probability in the post-mitigation is lowered by 20%, and also the score is reduced from 46 to 40. As you can see from the influence diagram of that risk, there is margin of reduction because we can have some influence on the causes of this risk. For example, reducing negligence on the job site, hiring as another site safety manager. The next risk is hoist operation safety. Since the size of the job site is really big, there is a medium probability of this risk because of the difficult interaction of different types of work on job site. This risk is in the pre-mitigation phase as a medium impact on the schedule and a very high impact on the cost. That's why we decided to reduce the risk. The probability in the post-mitigation is lower by 20%, and also the score is reduced from 40 to 24. Also in this case, you can see from the influence diagram that there is a margin of reduction because we can have some influence on the causes of these risks. Their strategies consist on improving the labor skills, for example, forcing them to take hosting operation licenses and do training to improve the coordination during these critical phases. The last risk analysis is ambiguous specifications. This risk is in the pre-mitigation phase as a medium probability to happen, a high impact on the schedule and a very high impact on the cost. That's why we decided to reduce this risk. The probability in the post-mitigation is lower by 20% and also the score is reduced from 46 to 40. Also in this case, you can see from the influence diagram that there is a margin of reduction because we can have some influence on the causes of this risk. The strategies consist on improving communication between parties and hiring a design firm with experience and good reputation. Now Walter is going to explain more in detail his risk.
The first risk to present is OSHA violations. OSHA is authorized to conduct workplace inspections and investigations to determine whether employers are complying with standards issued by the Agency for Safe and Healthful Workplaces. The violations happen when negligent workers are not certified or when they don't follow the safety regulations, causing violations and probably accidents. The effect from this is that the project can be suspended until a solution is presented to DOB. It causes delays and also economic damages, since fines could be given. Pre-mitigation, probability that it happens is very high, between 60%. The schedule is medium. Cost is very high. This risk is easy to manage if we have a site safety manager on site controlling all these situations and having all the training necessary for the personnel. A score 56. Post-mitigation, probability after the steps we took to mitigate this risk is medium, 40%. The schedule is high and cost is very high. The mitigation method, the response is reduced. Total cost is $2,700,000. Here, we can observe the influence diagram for this risk and identify the causes and outcomes. With the right steps, we can avoid a much bigger impact to our project, avoiding delays. Another risk I'm going to describe here is platform construction delays. It is caused by different factors: when materials are delayed, when we have design changes, negligence on the job site, and labor shortage. Weather conditions is also another factor that could affect our project. The effects we have due to this risk are scheduling changes, liquidated damages, and increase in budget. Pre-mitigation, probability that happens is very high, 85%. Schedule is high, cost is very high. This risk is difficult to manage, since some factors are unpredictable and many other factors are included in this risk in order for the platform to be constructed. Score 72. Post mitigation, probability is medium, schedule is very high, and cost is very high. Score is 40. Mitigation methods, the response is reduced and the total cost is $3 million. Here, we can observe the influence diagram for this risk and identify the causes and outcomes. This risk is difficult to control since many factors cause it and are difficult to control. Another risk I have is DOB violations. These violations are due to lack of compliance with some provisions. Actually, DOB violation is a notice that a project is not compliant with some provisions of applicable law and includes an order from the commissioner to stop any work. Effect: it stops all work until further notice by a DOB inspector, causing delays. Pre-mitigation, probability is medium with 40%, schedule is high, and cost is very high. Manageability is easy. We need to comply with all regulations from building department, avoiding like this getting fines to our project. Score is 40. Post mitigation. Probability is medium with 20%. Schedule is very high. Cost is high, and score is 24. Mitigation method response is reduced, and total cost is $1,400,000. Here, we can observe the influence diagram for this risk and identify the causes and outcomes. We'll have DOB violations if we don't follow the regulations, and it will cause delays and liquidated damages. Now, Aki is going to describe her risks.
First risk is scheduling errors. Schedule shows the chronological order in which activities and tasks are intended to take place. Different factors can affect and provoke changes. During the pre-mitigation process, the probability of such a risk is a medium probability of occurrence. The schedule and cost was very high, where the manageability is moderate, scoring at 40. One of the methods taken was to reduce this task. By reducing this risk, we have reduced the probability occurrence to low, where our schedule and cost remains the same. Here, our score was reduced from 40 to 24. This shows the influence diagram for scheduling errors, where we have no control on the items shown in red, such as weather conditions, financial risk, accidents, and lawsuits. Some of the items where we do have control is the negligence on the job site, where we can have a site safety manager on site for various inspections. During the design phase of the platform, the project manager can attempt to create a timeline as to how long certain activities may take and take proper precautions by communicating with their contractors and vendors whether the work will be executed in a timely fashion. Secondly, my next risk is change orders. Change orders is another risk we constantly have to think about throughout the entire project. Change orders during the project generally occurs where there are design changes. Budget increases due to changing materials or increasing labor in the project. This risk has a very high probability of occurrence. The schedule impact is high and the cost is very high, where the manageability is difficult, scoring at 72. The risk response is to reduce this risk. By reducing the risk, we have reduced the probability occurrence to high where our schedule and cost still remains the same. Here, our risk was reduced from 72 to 56. This shows the influence diagram for change orders where we have no control in political influences, ambiguous specification, or building codes. During the entire length of the project, New York City Building Code can be updated at any time, and the project manager must be up to date about the possible changes where there are no control to mitigate this risk. Items where we have control are designer expertise, budget, and materials. We constantly have to keep track of all new items or changes that occurred in the project. My third and final risk is poor communication between parties. Poor communication between parties normally occurs when everyone does not keep in contact with each other throughout the different phases of the project. During the pre-mitigation and post-mitigation process, we have determined that this risk has a medium probability of occurrence. The schedule impact is high and the cost is very high, where the manageability is difficult, scoring F40. This risk response is to reduce this risk. This shows the influence diagram for this risk where we have no control of lawsuits occurring. In order to reduce this risk, we must constantly communicate with all parties involved, either by emails, phone calls, or weekly meetings. Without constant communications, there can be discrepancy of materials and ambiguous specifications, which will delay in schedule and elongate the project timeframe. Here, Rupsha will continue to explain her three major risks involved in the Eastern Yard Platform project.
My first risk is lawsuits, which can occur when members involved in the project will be taken to court due to negligence on the project site or with the project plans and execution. This is caused by negligence and can delay the project schedule because work must be stopped for the lawsuit. The probability of this occurring is 40%. The probability of it affecting the schedule is very high, and the impact on the cost is very high. The manageability of this risk is difficult and has a score of 40. The risk response is to accept this risk because it could be more costly to try and reduce it beforehand. Therefore, in post-mitigation, the probability remains 40%. The next risk I want to discuss is changing of building regulations. This happens because the project site must comply with city and state building specifications. This can occur when building regulations are not up to that standard. It can delay the schedule while the project plan is reformatted to fit the regulations. This risk has a high probability at 60%. It impacts the schedule at a high amount and the cost at a very high amount. The manageability is moderate. The risk response is to reduce this risk because it would save a lot of time and money in the project. Therefore, the post-mitigation probability is 40%, and the score changes from 56 to 40. The influence diagram shows that since we have control over the safety and building materials of the project, there is a way to reduce the risk. Finally, another major risk is funding changes. This means that the amount of money received for the project changes due to the lack of financial support. It is caused by changes in who is funding the project and for how much. The cost and budget of the project must be changed according to the amount of funding changes. This risk's probability is 40%. The schedule is impacted a high amount, and the probability of it affecting the cost is very high. The manageability is difficult because it would stop the project, but because funding is from outside sources, the risk response is to accept it. So, therefore, the score remains at 40. The influence diagram shows that many causes to the risk are out of the manager's control. Therefore, the risk is accepted. In order to review all of these risks together for the Hudson Yards project, we have created a pre-mitigation matrix and a post-mitigation matrix. Although it seems that the risks remain red, it shows that the score of each risk decreases. This is the post-mitigation matrix. This is the distribution analyzer for both the cost and the finish date of the project. Thank you for your time.